Good morning, and thank you for being here on a beautiful day in Clinton, Iowa. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to help us celebrate the 75th anniversary. And it's with great pleasure that I get to introduce Brian Barr, a First Sergeant with the National Guard, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I would ask that after the pledge you remain standing if you're able for a minute.
I apologize. I'm going to go a little bit off script. We've got an Air Force guy named Andy Sokolovich who's going to come up here and give me a hand with this. Oh, nice. that is awesome. The Army says we gave birth to the Air Force. They say it's more like a divorce, but we're I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I wanted to take a moment today at the beginning of the celebration to pause for both thanks and reflection. On the eve of the 20th anniversary of 9/11, at a time when our domestic first responders and healthcare providers are working around the clock and members of the military are in harm's way throughout the world, I ask you that you join me in a silent moment of both gratitude and remembrance. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Andy. Please be seated. My name is Brian Kelly, and I have the privilege of being the president of Clinton Community College, part of the Eastern Iowa Community College District. 75 years of transforming lives. 75 years of transferring students to four-year institutions. 75 years of partnering with industry in our community, 75 years of serving veterans, first responders, and essential workers, 75 years of upgrading skills and preparing our workforce, and 75 years of being central to the success of this community. I wanted to thank our elected representatives who are here today, Representative Mary Wolf, Senator Chris Knoyer, from Marriott Miller Meek's office, Josh, Penny from Senator Grassley's office, Chris from Senator Ernst's office, Mayor of Clinton Scott Madison. Recently, we're still, I'll always think of him as Mayor, Don Tilton, 22-year mayor from DeWitt. Nice to see you, Don. And thanks for Steve Hessmiller for being here also from DeWitt. In March of 1946, a public referendum was presented to the citizens of Clinton, Iowa. The answer was a resounding yes, and on September 9th of that year, exactly 75 years ago, Clinton Junior College officially opened its doors. More than half of our students were returning from World War II, veterans recently returning home from the war. For 75 years, we have continued to serve folks who are new to the community and veterans returning. 57% of nurses in this country have started their education at community colleges. 75% of EMTs in this country receive their training at community colleges. I want to talk a little bit about 1946, 75 years ago. I bet everyone's seen one of these movies. In 1946, what a great year for movies, by the way. If you love films, I love films. It's a Wonderful Life, Frank Capra, came out in 1946. Notorious, an Alfred Hitchcock film, another great film. My Darling Clementine, John Ford film, if you like westerns. And Howard Hawks did The Big Sleep. There was music, too, in 1946. Oh, What It Seemed to Be by Frank Sinatra. Johnny Mercer did Personality. The Ink Spots had a hit with To Each Its Own. And Perry Como had this hit, Prisoner of Love, the #1 hit from 1946. Popular foods in 1946? Jell-O salad, potato and hot dog salad, and plum charlotte, which is still one of the best uses for old bread. If you don't know what plum charlotte is, look it up. Hopping ahead to 2021, 75 years later, some things have changed. Our top movies this year are Black Widow and Jungle Cruise, Godzilla vs. Kong, and a reboot of Space Jam with LeBron. So we've changed a little. Some of the music we're listening to this year is Olivia Rodrigo with Driver's License, Dua Lipa with Levitating. I love Dua Lipa. And The Weeknd with Blinding Light. We've also seen a re-release of a classic record this year from Metallica's Black record, released again. We'll talk a little bit about Metallica in a few minutes. Popular food in 2021 includes pizza, steak and baked potatoes, tacos, and a direct quote from a website talking about food in 2021, just about anything deep fried. The past 18 months have been really challenging for our students, our staff, and our faculty. We're in uncharted waters here, and we've continued to do remarkable things at a time of challenge. We all know the hurdles we've had with the global pandemic in our country over the past 18 months. I want to talk a little bit about what the staff and students and faculty at Clinton Community College have done in that time of extreme challenge. On March 2nd, 2021, voters of Eastern Iowa Community Colleges approved a $40 million bond to fund new career and technical education facilities to create career academies throughout the district. This bond passed in Clinton County with 88% of the vote. Absolutely remarkable. The new facilities will provide training for our workforce, new programs, and programs as diverse as automotive, culinary arts, agriculture, and welding. Just as in 1946, when we opened and created new programs for the community, we continue to meet that need. A special thanks to the superintendents and school boards of all 8 districts in Clinton and Jackson County who supported this initiative by committing students for the next 10 years. That's a pretty big accomplishment for a tough year, but we have more. Clinton Community College received $1 million in grant funding from the Iowa Department of Education Career Academy Incentive Fund. This is the largest fund available through the largest amount of dollars available through this fund, and this will go directly into purchasing equipment for our DeWitt Center. In July this year, we received some great news. The heavy metal band Metallica chose Clinton Community College out of all community colleges in the country. They chose 9 this year from the entire country to receive a $100,000 grant to become Metallica scholars. I just spoke with Ann earlier, and we've already dispersed $44,000 of that money directly into student pockets this year. This is going to keep students in school, and it's going to keep students progressing and completing in programs that our workforce and our industry needs. Metallica talks about this by saying the trades were important to their success. They use electricians and drivers and maintenance engineers and public safety, logistical organizers. All of those people help with their success. This is their way of giving back. Why do I bring this up? Because 75 years ago, heck, 5 years ago, if someone told me a heavy metal band was going to be helping our students get through our programs and entering the workforce, I would have thought they were crazy. And today it's happening. 1946 to 2021, we're living in different times. Who's going to be our new heroes? Who's going to embrace the opportunities and challenges for the next 75 years? And who will our future supporters be? Maybe they'll be opera singers, maybe they'll be filmmakers, but we need to reach out. We have an outstanding program today, and I'm thrilled to have a great slate of guest speakers. At this time, it's my pleasure to introduce the Chancellor of Eastern Iowa Community Colleges and my boss, Down to side.
Good morning. On behalf of the Board of Trustees of the Eastern Iowa Community Colleges, a system that I'm privileged to serve as Chancellor and Chief Executive Officer, I bring you welcome and thanks for being here to help celebrate this wonderful event. As you know, the Eastern Iowa Community Colleges are a family of colleges that include Clinton, Muscatine, and Scott Community Colleges. Clinton is just a fundamental piece and an important cog in the system that provides education and training primarily to Clinton and Jackson County and supports the economic development of those communities. The education and training that we provide allows people to improve their lives. It allows business and industry to have a skilled workforce, and it allows us to work with others to build the communities in which we live and to make them the kinds of communities that we want to live in. So when somebody asks me what we do as community colleges, I'd like to keep it simple and say, we change lives and we build communities. And Clinton Community College is fundamental to that. Now we're about to listen to, I'm delighted to listen to Steve Barleen, our resident expert on the history of Clinton Community College and history faculty member here at the college, talk about its founding. That made me think a little bit about what it must have been like 75 years ago. What the founders of this institution must have been like and what they must have been thinking. I don't think any of them are here today. Some of you may have been alive, but try to put yourself in that position and say, think about what it was like for somebody to come, for some group of private citizens to come together with the notion that education and training beyond high school was important. It was fundamental to the growth and the development of this community. Something that we still believe today. But it was a controversial idea in 1946. Steve will talk about it. In 1946, President Truman, anticipating the return of veterans from World War II, my father and others, and many of you, I'm sure, are related to those returning greatest generation folks. How are we going to absorb them into the economy? Because now we've had women working in factories for all those years, and how are we going to manage this? He put together a commission called the Truman Commission. And one of the recommendations of that commission, one of the, I know Steve will talk about, so I'm trying not to say too much and step on his material, but one of the assertions of that commission, which was considered to be almost crazy, was that as much as 50% of the American population might benefit from education or training beyond high school. Think about that. Think about the courage, the foresight, the commitment to the future of this community that those founders thought about when they said, you know something? We think that people could benefit from education and training. We think this community could grow because of that. When at a national level, that commission recommendation was thought to be crazy. The numbers before World War II were in the 10 to 15% range of people going on to college of any kind. And so all of a sudden, community colleges were created to absorb that need. And as a result, the middle class of this country was built in the second half of the 20th century. An underreported story about the importance of community colleges in doing that. So we all stand in their footsteps of thoughtful, brave, courageous, committed individuals that said, let's build a college that would help build our community. And they've done that. And it's our responsibility to make their dreams go forward, not just for 75 years, but for more years. You know, today we stand here with not the notion that, hey, maybe 50% of the population could benefit from education and training beyond high school. We think 100% can. And that's our commitment to provide universal access to post-secondary education, the only country in the world that even aspires to that goal. And that's what we do. And that's what I'm proud to have been part of for the over 40 years of my professional career. That's what I'm proud to stand before you and say Clinton Community College is part of a universal movement for education and training to lift up our communities and to lift up our individuals, to change lives and to build communities. So, Steve, I hope I haven't stepped on too much of the Human Commission. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Don. Our next speaker is Steve Barleen. Steve earned a PhD in history from Northern Illinois University. His primary historical focus is labor history, and he's published articles in the Journal of Illinois State Historical Society and Journal of Labor History, among others. Most of his published works relate to taverns and the Prohibition movement and working class issues. In 2014, he was awarded the Henry E. Pratt Memorial Award for Outstanding Scholarly Publication in Illinois History for an article about our mining community. Steve is also the author of The Tavern, A Social History of Drinking and Conviviality, published by Greenwood Press. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Steve Barleen.
Good morning. Thank you for the introduction. Thank everybody for being here. We put strategically on the seats there some sunglasses, and you may need them as the sun continues to rise in the sky. I'm going to conclude with a short video, and it may help you to see it. I'm going to try to take mine off and see. Well, there's a lot of glare on it. I apologize. Okay, well, let me go ahead and get started. I've scripted my remarks because I don't want to wander off topic. And my students will tell you I'm pretty good at that, so I'm going to go ahead and jump in here. All right, so we've come together then on this gorgeous day to celebrate the 75 years that Clinton Community College has enriched the lives of everyone who's called this little portion of America home. I'm honored and I'm humbled that I'm able to speak to you today about the significance of the community college in the post-World War II, post-Great Depression period. Like millions of Americans have, I started my college education at a community college, and that was Northern Virginia Community College. I'm proud to say it's the same community college in which our First Lady, Dr. Jill Biden, is a professor today. I had grown up in a rural part of Southern Oregon. When I graduated from high school, there were no community colleges within 100 miles of my hometown. I'd been a poor high school student, lazy mostly, and I, like many from my hometown, joined the military as a way to get out into the world, and of course as a way to serve my country. After completing an enlistment in the Army and beginning several years in the Army National Guard, I used the GI Bill to pay for a bachelor's degree in history. Emerging from 4 years of college with no student loan debt and a better chance to grab a position in the American labor market. So my story, like the story of so many Americans, directly relates to the importance of community colleges and their ability to offer so many the opportunity to grab onto the rungs of the American dream and hold on, allowing millions to better their lives for the betterment of us all. So my personal story, a very common one, has themes that relate to the story of Clinton Community College, which opened its doors in 1946. As part of a national effort to provide educational opportunities to the 16 million returning veterans who so recently vanquished the enemies of liberal democracy in Europe and Asia. These brave GIs would return to a world that would offer them vast opportunities. We have come to call this generation the greatest generation, and I believe that label fits. They suffered unimaginable hardships as young people in the Great Depression. They confronted and defeated evil during World War II, and they returned to build a middle-class America that would provide vast opportunities for future generations. The community college is one of the most important pieces at the center of the story. It hadn't been like this for their fathers, who had defeated the Kaiser in World War I. That generation of soldiers began to return from Europe in 1919. They returned that year to an economic recession that lasted into the early 1920s. Many found their jobs gone, and for most, college was out of the question. The norm for the elite, but unheard of for most of the vast American working class. They struggled to make sense of a country that thanked them for their service but did not offer them a hand. The great American writer Ernest Hemingway, who had served as a medic in Italy and was wounded on the battlefield, captured the feelings of this generation, some called the lost generation, in his moving memoir, A Movable Picture. He describes disillusioned and shiftless 20-somethings looking for purpose in the years after the war. He writes, "In those days, we did not trust anyone who had not been in the war." Remembering his own experience, he recounts, "When you go to war as a boy, you have a great illusion of immortality. Other people get killed, not you. Then when you are badly wounded, the first time, you lose that illusion, and you know it can happen to you. After being severely wounded 2 weeks before my 19th birthday, I had a bad time until I figured out that nothing could happen to me that had not happened to all men before me. Whatever I had to do, men had always done it. If they had done it, then I could do it too, and the best thing was not to worry about it." The period after World War II would be different for their sons and daughters. After that terrible war, GIs would return to find opportunity through the Servicemen's Readjustment Act, popularly known as the GI Bill of Rights. It was signed by President Roosevelt on June 22, 1944, as a far-sighted effort to prepare for the end of the war and the influx of returning veterans. The GI Bill provided many benefits, but most importantly for our story, it would provide a generation of working-class Americans with an opportunity that many of their parents had not had, to become college educated. Not only to better themselves, but to better the society and democracy in which they live. The story of this college is also their story. The promise of America has always been and will always be a work in progress. A nation that at its inception spoke the language of freedom, but enslaved a large portion of its population and denied the right to vote to a majority of its citizens. Beginning in the 19th century, the nation started a long, slow progression toward positive change. It expanded voting rights, with access to the ballot still being contested today. And after a civil war that cost over 600,000 lives, the nation ended slavery. We have also greatly advanced access to education. The individual, whom many consider the father of public education, Horace Mann, believed that education was key to the strengthening of democracy. In the first half of the 19th century, he encouraged Americans to see the importance of public education as a bulwark of a healthy, democratic society. In 1838, Mann started a journal and began lecturing widely about his ideas. He argued that a republic cannot remain ignorant and free, writing, "Education, beyond all other devices of human origin, is the great equalizer of the conditions of men, the balance wheel of the social machinery." In his 1839 essay, "The Necessity of Education in a Republican Government," Mann put forth, for a liberal democracy to survive and thrive, it must endeavor to provide education for its citizens. He argued that the public must take an interest in universal public education and pay for it. The schools must embrace students of all religious, social, and ethnic backgrounds. That public education must be secular, free of religious influence. That public education must teach the importance of and spirit of a free society. Realizing these goals continues to be a work in progress. Shortly after Mann's death in 1859, the nation began tearing itself apart on the ballot. But in 1862, Congress further advanced things with the passage of the Morrill Act, which set aside public land in each state for the creation of colleges that would open educational opportunities for more Americans. Every state can boast of at least one land-grant college. Iowa State University is one of them. In 1890, Congress passed a second Morrill Act that sought to address the denial of admission of African Americans to land-grant colleges. Many of today's historically black colleges trace their beginnings to this act. We can directly link wide access today to the public university to these buildings. At the beginning of the 20th century, community college began furthering that access. Community college got its start in 1901, led by William Rainey other college presidents sought to create two-year schools that would focus on the freshmen and sophomores in general education, allowing four-year schools to focus on upperclassmen and research, a system at the time known as the German model. Ultimately, in 1901, the first community college was established in the United States in Joliet, Illinois. Joliet Junior College had its origins in the integration of college-level courses into the high school curriculum. In practice today, that many Clinton County high school students were able to take advantage of the campus. Over the next several decades, the growth of the community college happened slowly. In 1910, there were 3 public junior colleges. By 1914, there were 14 public junior colleges and 32 private. In the shaping of American higher education, UCLA professor Arthur Cohen argues that the growth of the community college came about from the need to train workers for industry, coupled with an increasing desire to provide more opportunity for social equality. But it was also initially driven by the elitism shown by educators such as Harvard, who sought to keep elite education elite by separating working class and lower middle class students into 2-year schools, separating the masses from the upper class of society. However, after World War II, the community college would become the bridge that Americans can take to any level of society. True to Horace Mann's dream, its doors are open to all, regardless of where they go. Where they go is up to them. The greatest generation would prove to be the greatest boosters of public education in the community college. One Iowa newspaper on October 12, 1946, stated that returning war veterans have boosted enrollment in Iowa's 21 junior colleges nearly 100% over September 1945. Of the 2,163 students at junior colleges that year, half were veterans. The state official noted that Iowa State and the University of Iowa were bursting at the seams, struggling with the influx of new freshmen, noting, quote, "The biggest bulge in college enrollment is caused by freshmen, and the second biggest bulge is caused by sophomores. Those are the students junior colleges can handle. The schools are prepared to give the pre-professional courses freshmen and sophomores have to have anyway." One of these new junior colleges was Clinton Junior College, which admitted its first class in the fall of 1946 with 86 students, more than half of whom were newly returned veterans. By 1947, half of the nation's college students were GI Bill recipients, comprising 2.5 million of the nation's college students. Overall, college enrollment in the years after World War II was 75% higher than in the pre-war years. Some predicted doom for higher education as veterans flooded into the nation's colleges and universities. Some, such as Harvard President James Kinect, expressed concern that incoming veterans, most of whom were first-generation college students emerging from working-class family backgrounds, could denigrate education. What they found, of course, instead, was that veterans raised the quality of education and would go on to make up vast armies of the professional class that would lead the United States in decades after World War II. Today, close to a quarter of our nation's undergraduates are at community colleges. But our community colleges are struggling, seeing around a 10% drop in enrollment. Let us heed Horace Mann's call to strengthen our democracy with quality public education. Let's invest in these students. These students are our future. The community college, like the GI Bill, is a fantastic public investment. So what the story of the GI Bill and the community college tells us is that when the United States invests in its young people, it sees a great return on that investment. For every dollar of the $15 billion spent on the GI Bill in the years right after World War II, it is estimated that $7 was returned to the economy. After World War II, the GI Bill provided returning veterans with access to higher education, help with buying a home, and help starting small businesses, and more. And it has continued to do so. So what I have to show you now, and this is great, the sun went kind of cloud, I got to move quicker. So the following is a short video that was produced by the Army Information Branch, Army Pictorial Services, Air Forces, and the Navy Department. And it was shown to veterans who were out processing. And it can give us a view of the world of opportunities available to them. In some ways, too, this video is inadvertently used. I think you'll enjoy it very much. So it gives us a nice feel of time and what veterans were walking into in the out process from the military at the end of World War II. Let's go ahead and watch it.
Some of these marching men wanted to go back to school, but discovered they didn't have the money. Others learned the jobs they left behind were gone, or if they were there, they didn't want them. They wanted something better. But for these returning soldiers, no legislation had been passed, or any program mapped out to give them the break they deserved. They got medals, but 15 years later, some of these men were selling apples on street corners. Others were known contemptuously as bonus marchers. What about this time, Mac? Are these Navy boys going to get the same sort of deal? What about this man who's fought the long, tough fight up Italy and has been knocked out? What's going to happen to him? Is it going to be the same for these GIs hitting the beach in Saipan? Or the Siegfried Line, or the Gothic Line, or any line that's needed hitting? When it's all over, is it going to be like last time for them? No, this time it's going to be different. Yeah? What makes you so sure? Because in Washington, there were a group of congressmen with long memories who were in the last war. They knew that when a man gets out of the Army or Navy or Marine, he's worried most about a job, an education, and a home. And that's why Congress, led by the President, passed the law. The Servicemen's Readjustment Act of 1944, better known as the GI Bill of Rights. And to make sure it works, the Veterans Administration is already busy in Washington with General Frank Hines in charge. Sounds all right. Sounds great, in fact. But I'm from Missouri. You got to show me, brother. Happy to. Let's take a typical example. We'll call this corporal who saw action in Italy Big Jones. Here he's signing his name to one of the most important documents of his career, his honorable discharge. After that, he bucks his last GI line to get his mustering out pay. Everybody get the same pay? No. The amount depends on the length of a man's service. $100 for the man who's only worn a uniform 2 months. $200 for the GIs who served here in the States more than 60 days. And $300 for the soldier who's been overseas, like Joe. He gets $100 now, another $100 in a month, and the last $100 in 2 months. Pretty nice, huh? After all, $100 is a lot of bucks. I'm not complaining, so far. But changing over from a GI to a civilian costs money. By the time a guy has bought himself a new outfit and looked around, trying to remember his saluting days are over, most of his dough is pretty well shot. What happens then? That's where the GI Bill of Rights comes in. Jones, by law, like every discharged soldier, must report back to his draft board. There, if he wants his old job back, he finds out if he's eligible and how to go about it. But suppose his ex-boss doesn't want to give him back his old job. If necessary, the local draft board will get the United States Attorney to go to bat for the corporal at no cost. And his ex-boss will have to rehire him for at least a year. If not at his old job, then one with equivalent seniority, status, and pay. Not bad, not bad. But what about the guy who was unemployed before he entered the Army? And what about a guy like Jones here who wants a better job than when he went in? The United States Employment Service has 1,500 offices throughout the country with a special Veterans Employment representative to assist ex-soldiers in finding the right job. But what if the right job doesn't turn up so fast and he's unemployed for a while? Then, like Tabor here, who's eligible, he receives unemployment insurance, $20 a week up to a maximum of 1 year, depending on his length of service. Or take the case of a man like Albert Falk, who goes into his own business after he's discharged. If things are a little slow in getting started, and he's earning less than $100 a month, then through the GI Bill of Rights, he receives a check each month, making up the difference. You said something about an education. What about a man like Sergeant Brown here, who's just been let out? Before the Army got him, he was going to school. Now he'd like to go back. Veterans Administration offices have been set up in every state. And it's here the ex-soldier goes if he wants to continue his education under the GI Bill of Rights. All he has to do when interviewed is prove that he was not over 25 when he entered the service, or show that his education was interrupted. You mean he can get any kind of education he wants? Now you're getting the idea. Any kind of education, and in any part of the country. High school, grade school, college, university. The ex-sergeant, after consulting the Veterans Administration, decides he wants to go to New York University. And here he calls on the registrar, who also serves as a veterans advisor. Brown tells the registrar what he'd like to do, the courses he'd like to study. Then, don't tell me I know, the GI Bill of Rights looks after the money end, too. That's right. Tuition is taken care of, funds are provided for laboratory fees, books, supplies, and equipment are included. Through the GI Bill of Rights, the government pays Sergeant Brown's school up to $500 a year, while Brown gets $50 a month for subsistence. If he were married, he gets $75. For how long? Depending on the length of service. A veteran can go to school from 1 to 4 years. If the ex-soldier's already completed college and wants to take a postgraduate course, such as law, there's nothing to stop him. Oh yes, one more point. Every soldier or sailor should remember that refresher and retraining courses are open to everyone regardless of age. If a man wants to, he can brush up on his training or plan to take new courses. Nice house, isn't it?
Sure, it's nice. If I'm lucky after I get out, in 5 or 10 years, I'll have one pretty much like it.
Well, George Tobin, just driving in, didn't have to wait any 5 or 10 years. As soon as he got out of the Navy, he applied to the Director of Finance, Veterans Administration in Washington. They were able to help him get a loan by guaranteeing it up to $2,000. Of course, George, like every veteran, had to meet certain conditions, prove he was a reliable citizen. But he was able to do that all right.
I guess I was all wrong about it being like last time. Look, wait a second. What about the beautiful blonde? Don't tell me the GI Bill of Rights guarantees every returning serviceman one of those, too.
No, that's still up to the veteran. Just as it's up to him to take advantage of the GI Bill of Rights and not expect the government to come after him. The GI Bill of Rights is not a reward, or a handout, or a gravy train, but rather an American way to make it easier for each man to take his place once again in the community and get some of those things for which he went to war. A job, a business, an education, a home.
Next, how funds from the federal GI Bill are flowing to for-profits.
Thank you, Steve, and I hope you enjoyed that the piece of history. Our next two speakers are graduates of Clinton Community College, and I'm really pleased to announce that Dr. Carl Warren is here today. Dr. Warren graduated with an Associate of Arts from Clinton Community College in 1967. He earned his Bachelor's of Business Administration and Master's of Arts degrees from the University of Iowa and graduated with a PhD from Michigan State University. Dr. Warren is a retired professor emeritus of accounting from the University of Georgia and the senior author of 7 accounting textbooks published by Cengage Learning. Dr. Warren had instructors Jack Whipple and Mel Erickson, and at that time in 1965, they used the edition of the 9th edition of the accounting book that Dr. Warren is now the editor of Today. So a great link back to community college, his experience here, and it's a real pleasure to introduce Dr. Carl Warren.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be back here at the college. I came a little bit early and walking the hallways, and it brings back a lot of memories, a lot of fond memories when I was a student here. Anne asked me to briefly share my story of how Clinton Community College helped my career and how it changed my life. And that's what I'd like to share with you briefly today. First of all, Clinton Community College made it affordable for me to go to college. So my father was a veteran, World War II, came back, already had one child. I was born pretty quickly after he came back from World War II. We ended up with 5 children in our family. My father started as a game warden with Iowa, state of Iowa. He struggled with financially for that, so then he came to Clinton and became a lab technician at Clinton Corn Processing Company, ADM. As a result of that, I'm the second of 5 children. My older brother graduated from Clinton High first. He joined the Marines. Later went on to college in California. I was the first to go to college of my family, first to graduate in my family. As was indicated, I got my Associate of Arts degree here at Clinton Community College. My younger brother also got his Associate Arts degree here, and my younger sister also got her Associate of Arts degree. My brother went on to University of Iowa, as I did, and my sister went on to Northern University and got her degree there. So Clinton Community College really allowed me. I don't know what I would have done, really. Back when I graduated in 1965, the Vietnam War was in full force. Eventually I did, and I was drafted several times. I eventually did join the Air Force and spent my time there. I don't know what I would have done. And it basically changed my life in that respect. Allowing me to go to college. When I went to junior college here, or community college, I was able to work, saved up enough money to attend the University of Iowa and pay my own way through my junior and senior year. So it really afforded me that opportunity. Also, Clinton Community College provided me a solid academic foundation. There were a lot of really good professors here, but 2 of my mentors were Jack Whipple, who taught me principles of accounting. I still remember Jack staying after class and mentoring me about what to expect and what to do when I transferred to the University of Iowa. I remember Mel Erickson teaching me the art of writing. So I completed my associate's degree here with a solid foundation in accounting and an ability to write. Transferred to the University of Georgia. That's where I came from. I transferred to the University of Iowa to do my junior and senior year. When I went to the University of Iowa during my junior year, my high school sweetheart and girlfriend, Sharon McDermott, took Jack Whipple's Principles of Accounting classes. That allowed her to obtain a job with McGladrey, Hanson & Dunn, local CPA firm here in town, as a bookkeeper. Sharon and I were married after I graduated my undergraduate degree at the University of Iowa. She was able, with that background, to obtain a job with Knoll Motors, a Chevrolet dealership in Iowa City. And then with that background, with her ability to support my education, my further education, I did my master's degree, did that 1 year. My accounting professors at the University of Iowa suggested I enroll in the PhD program, so I applied and was accepted at Michigan State University. Sharon applied to several CPA firms in Lansing, Michigan, to see if she could find a job. Got 2 offers, and accepted an offer a regional accounting firm by the name of Harris, Reams, and Ambrose where she worked for 3 years as I completed my doctorate. So in essence, Clinton Community College enabled me to go ahead and obtain my graduate degree. Sharon and I celebrated our 52nd marriage anniversary, wedding anniversary, August 30th. And she still reminds me that she supported me and financed my way through my graduate degree. I jokingly say, and I've been paying ever since for that. I kind of like to wrap this up by addressing some of the young people here. I was hoping there might be some students here who might be thinking, well, these are nice stories. That's a nice story, but what advice do you have for me? You know, what can I take away from it? Well, my advice for the younger people and students would be this. You know, a lot of life is luck. Right place, right time. If Bill Gates had been born 10 years later, maybe 5 years later, or maybe even 1 year later, he would not be the richest man, one of the richest men in the world. So a lot of it is right time, right place. But here's the key for young people. They need to put them in a position to be lucky. So when that opportunity comes, they can grab a hold of it and run with it. In my case, Clinton Community College helped provide me with that opportunity. That opportunity came when Professor Philip Fess, professor at the University of Illinois, the author of Principles of Accounting textbook, asked me to review the 12th edition of his textbook. That's the same textbook I used in the classroom, right over here, with Jack Whipple as the 9th edition. That was the opportunity. And Clinton Community College prepared me for that. I grabbed that and ran with it, did as thorough review as I could. As a result of that, Professor Fess asked me to be a consulting editor on the 13th edition of that textbook. Followed by, after that, I became an author on the 14th edition of that textbook. And in the next couple of weeks, we are starting to prepare for the revision of the 29th edition of that textbook. And Clinton Community College provided me the foundation for being able to do that. So my advice for young people is that Clinton Community College can provide them with the foundation, the opportunity, the position to be lucky. And when they get that opportunity, they need to grab it and run with it. And if they do that, they will succeed also.
Thank you, Dr. Warren. Continuing my excitement to welcome our graduates, our final speaker today is Catherine Wynn Calvin. Catherine is a 2011 graduate of the Clinton Community College nursing program. She received an associate's degree. She went on to obtain a Bachelor of Science in Nursing and her BSN degree. Catherine is great at sharing stories about the help she received at the college through tutors, her friends in the library, and her support from the Paul B. Scherer Foundation. Catherine has started a bit of a family tradition with her attendance here at Clinton Community College, and I hope she'll talk about that today. Please help me welcome Catherine Wynn Calvin.
Right up here.
Good afternoon. My name is Catherine Wynn Calvin. Second chances. I initially worked in the newspaper industry in Chicago at the Chicago Tribune. Due to life circumstances, I found myself divorced, single, a mother of 2 small children, and a son who's in college. Life set me on a different path. Clinton Community College was that new path for me, a path to a new career and a better life. I persevered. It was not always easy. A&P was very tough for me. Biology was very tough for me. The science classes were very tough, but I had good teachers who helped me along the way. It wasn't easy, as I said. I am today an RN with a BSN. I've worked at the University of Iowa in the ortho department, and I currently work at Northwestern Hospital in the cardiac department. My mother, Loretta Wynn, was a role model for me. My sisters, Wanda, she was a PA. She still is, but she's in Nebraska. My sister Mary is in Texas, and she's a doctor. They were all very helpful, along with my family, friends, and staff here at CCC to help me along my nurse path. I found myself a role model for my children also. My daughter Haley Calvin and my daughter Olivia Calvin both took classes while they were in high school here at the college, so they were very fortunate. My daughter Haley is an alumni of CCC. She graduated 2 years after graduating high school from CCC. She went on to further obtain her graphic arts degree at the University of Northern Iowa. My daughter Olivia, who also had classes here while in high school, she's at Coe College, and she will round up her mathematics degree next year, and she'll be graduating, which is wonderful. It's amazing how your life's journey leads you. This journey I chose at CCC has been one of the best career decisions I've ever made. I am so thankful to God for this career path that it was available to me and is still available to students who need or want to go down that path. There were quite a few relationships that I had here at CCC that just sprang up all of a sudden as I was in my nursing classes. Charlotte Darcidan, she was a librarian in the library here, and she still is today. She was so attentive to me. She always let me study late, and she would be there. And sometimes I would have to bring my daughters with me, because I didn't have daycare, and my mom was always busy. So I brought my daughters with me to the library, and Charlotte would always keep them a little entertained. And the Paul B. Sherrard Foundation, whatever I applied for, it just seemed like, boy, I was on a hope and a prayer that I'd get it. And then the hope and prayer came through, and I was able to finish my associate's degree in nursing in 2 years. Well, not in 2.5 years, but it was quick for me. I enjoyed my time here at CCC. As I said, there were many teachers here who helped me along the way, and all of the students here who were so much younger than me, but they all were just so helpful. And as I said, it was not easy, but it was a path that I chose to go down, and I'm very grateful to CCC for participating in my life. Thank you very much.
What a great way to celebrate our 75th anniversary. In closing comments, I want to thank Ann Eisenman, our director of our foundation, and my helper in everything, for her year-long efforts to make sure that we're celebrating our 75 years. This is just the start. Today is the anniversary, but this is our anniversary year. I want to thank my leadership team here at Clinton Community College, Michelle Almendinger, Amy Madsen-Smith, Justin Sampson, and Ann. I want to thank our speakers today for sharing their stories and talking about the importance of community college and the history. For 75 years, we've been helping people in this community, transforming lives, opening doors. I want to thank the current and past leadership, the staff and faculty who work tirelessly to make sure our students succeed. And a couple of thoughts to remember. It's always a promising time if you look for promise, and there's always opportunities to help one another. Thank you for being part of our celebration. Thanks for being part of this vision. We've got some great cold drinks and delicious treats and a light lunch right inside. After sitting in the sun, a cold drink sounds pretty good right now. And if you want to be a part of this vision, we're happy to have that conversation with you. Thank you all for being here today.